Loretta Caine walked into Meridian Wellness Center at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, 64 years old, retired 14 months ago after 38 years as a charge nurse at a public hospital. She'd booked this appointment 6 weeks earlier and paid the $890 consultation fee the same day she scheduled it, because that's how she did things. You decide. You commit. You show up. She wore a light blue cotton jacket, dark slacks, comfortable shoes. On her left wrist was a watch, white face, brown leather band, worn at the buckle from years of use. Her colleagues had given it to her at her retirement party. She hadn't worn another watch since. She stepped up to the reception desk and set her folder on the counter. Confirmation, email printed, receipt, insurance card, photo ID. She had everything. The woman behind the desk looked at her, not at the folder, at her jacket, at her shoes, at the bag over her shoulder. Can I help you? I have an appointment, Loretta said. 9:15 with Dr. Vasquez. Cardiology consultation. The woman typed something, looked at the screen, typed again, then looked back at Loretta. I think there may have been a mix-up with your booking. Loretta placed the confirmation printout on the counter. No mix-up. That's the confirmation number. Booked 6 weeks ago. The woman, whose lanyard read, Deborah Mast, Patient Experience Manager, glanced at the paper. Not long enough to read it. This waiting area, she said, is designated for premium care patients. I'm a premium care patient. That's what I booked. Deborah's expression didn't change. Ma'am, perhaps the booking system placed you here in error. Our standard waiting area is through the hall on the left. Someone there can look into your appointment. Loretta looked at her. She didn't move. And the man sitting in the corner of the room, in a dark jacket and a plain grey shirt, heard every word. He didn't look up. Okay, let me stop right here for a second. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to look at something. The watch on Loretta Caine's wrist. Brown leather band, worn at the buckle. White face, no logo on the front. The kind of watch that doesn't announce itself. What you wouldn't know from looking at it is that it was a regional recognition award, an honor given to nurses and medical professionals who completed a specific number of years in public healthcare and demonstrated documented impact on patient outcomes. You applied for it. You had to be nominated. And the people who received it wore a specific model. Felix Ose had seen that watch before. He'd seen it at a regional medical conference 3 years ago when they announced the recipients. He was attending as a retired physician. He had looked at the row of honorees and thought, these are the people who actually keep the system running. Now he was sitting in the corner of a premium care waiting room, watching a woman with that watch on her wrist being told she was in the wrong place. He didn't say anything yet. He watched. That was the first thing. The second thing was happening at the reception desk. Callie Norris, 24 years old, 2 years into the job, was at the secondary terminal beside Deborah. Deborah had told her to pull up the full patient record and cross-check the booking. Callie typed in the name. The system returned 2 results for Caine. One was Loretta Caine, patient record, cardiology consultation booked and paid in full. The other was an administrative account. CMO credentials. Access level she had never seen before. She looked at it for a moment. Both had the same last name. She didn't know what to do with that. She hadn't been trained for whatever this was. It's showing something a little complex, she said quietly to Deborah. What does that mean? 2 accounts with the same name. I'm not sure how to reconcile it. Deborah didn't look at the screen. Just flag the booking as pending and I'll sort it out. Callie flagged it. She should have looked harder at that second account. Deborah came back to the counter. Loretta was still standing there, folder open, documents ready. Ma'am, I've looked into it, and we're going to need to transfer your appointment to the general intake side. Someone over there can review your paperwork and get you sorted. My paperwork is right here, Loretta said. The appointment is confirmed. The fee was paid. I'd like to speak with a supervisor. I am the supervisor for this area. Then I'd like to speak with whoever is above you. Deborah's posture shifted, just slightly. The practiced professional warmth hardened into something else. I understand you feel frustrated, she said. Her voice had gone to the register people use when they want to sound calm while meaning something else. But I need to maintain the experience standard for all our premium care guests. And right now I'm not able to verify that your booking belongs in this space. The confirmation number verifies it. Systems have errors. I also have the receipt. Ma'am, one word. That was the whole sentence. And then something she probably didn't intend to say out loud slipped through. Our premium care guests have a certain expectation when they come in. Part of my job is making sure that expectation is met. She let that sentence sit there. Loretta looked at her, and something in Loretta's face did not break, did not collapse, did not fill with the kind of pain that Deborah was maybe counting on, or maybe not counting on at all because she hadn't thought about Loretta as a person with a face that could do anything in particular. Her jaw tightened, barely visible. That was it. 38 years of charge nurse. She had stood in rooms full of grief and fear and rage and kept her voice level and her hands steady. She had absorbed things that should have broken people and walked back to the next patient. She knew how to hold herself in a room that wasn't built for her. She had been doing it her whole life. She would not beg. She would not argue with someone who wasn't listening. She reached back and picked up her documents, folded them, put them in her jacket pocket. Then she sat down in the nearest chair, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. She would not leave. She would wait to speak to whoever came next. Todd Marr appeared from the administrative corridor at 9:19. He was Meridian's director of marketing, mid-40s, blue shirt, no tie. He moved through the clinic the way people do when they think of a building as a product they're responsible for. He'd seen the interaction from the internal camera feed in his office. Not because he was watching for something like this. He was watching because he always watched the premium care floor. It was the flagship presentation of the brand. He came up beside Deborah and spoke quietly. What's the situation? Guest in the wrong area. I've asked her to relocate. She's not cooperating. Todd looked at Loretta sitting in the chair. He assessed. He made the same calculation Deborah had made, just with different language behind it. He thought, this creates an inconsistent experience for the other patients. He thought, how does this look? He stepped toward Loretta. Ma'am, we apologize for any confusion this morning. Is there something I can help clarify? Loretta looked up at him. Are you a medical supervisor? I'm the director of marketing. I oversee patient experience. Then no. You cannot help me. I'd like to speak with someone in clinical administration. Todd glanced back at Deborah. Deborah picked up the phone. Ray Cutler arrived 4 minutes later. He was the building security officer, 50-something. Broad shoulders, a face trained to neutral. He walked to where Deborah was standing, and she spoke to him in a low voice for about 30 seconds. He walked over to Loretta. Ma'am, the staff has asked that I escort you to the general intake area. Has anyone checked my booking? The staff has flagged a concern with your booking. My booking is valid. I have documentation. Ray looked at the folder in her hands. He looked at Deborah. Deborah gave him the confident, minimal nod of someone who has never had her word questioned in this building. That was enough for him. He didn't ask to see the folder. Real talk. I want to stop for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever been in that room? Not Loretta's chair. The other chairs. The ones where you watch something happening and your hands tighten and you think about speaking up and then you don't. Patricia Hale was in one of those chairs. White woman, mid-50s, a tailored jacket, a leather bag that cost more than Loretta's monthly retirement check. She had been sitting in the premium care waiting area for 20 minutes. She had watched all of it from 7 feet away. She knew what was happening. She didn't need anyone to explain it to her. She'd been in enough rooms in her life to know the difference between a booking error and a decision. Her hand moved toward the reception desk call button on the table beside her. Then she thought, I don't know the full story. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe the ticket really does have a problem. She picked up her phone and looked at her messages. She knew she was lying to herself. She just didn't stop. Have you ever been Patricia? I have. I think most of us have. And that's why it hits so hard when we watch it happen. Drop a comment. Tell me about a time you saw something wrong and didn't speak. I want to hear it. Esther Webb was 26 years old and in her first rotation as a nursing intern. She was walking through the administrative corridor at 9:22, carrying a tray of supplies from the storage room to the patient prep area. Not premium care. The hallway ran along the back of the waiting area, separated by a glass panel. She saw Loretta sitting alone in the chair while Ray stood nearby and Deborah returned to her desk. She saw the way Loretta was holding herself. Back straight, hands folded, chin level, the exact posture of someone who had learned to make their body say, "I am not finished. I will not make this easier for you by looking broken." Esther had worked one other rotation before this. She'd seen that posture before, on elderly patients who'd been waiting too long, on people who knew how to survive rooms that weren't built for them. She set the tray down inside the doorway of the supply closet. She reached into her bag and took out a bottle of water, unopened. She walked into the waiting area. She stopped beside Loretta's chair. "Would you like some water?" She said it quietly. "Not a performance. Not for anyone else in the room. Just, I see you. You exist." Loretta looked up at her. The intern's face was open, young, nothing behind it except a genuine question. Something in Loretta's shoulders dropped, barely a fraction of an inch. The kind of release that happens when you've been holding so much that the smallest weight added to the other side of the scale tips it. "Thank you," she said. "I would." She took the bottle. Their hands touched for a moment. That was it. One bottle of water in a waiting room. The only person in that building who looked at Loretta Caine and saw a human being first. In the corner of the room, the man in the grey shirt and dark jacket had been watching everything. He hadn't moved, hadn't pressed the call button, hadn't said anything to anyone. He had his phone in his hand, and Felix Osei, sitting 3 chairs to his left, was watching him the way Felix had been watching everything in that room for the last 20 minutes. Felix was 71 years old. He had practiced medicine in Ghana, and then in this country for 34 years before retiring. He had been nominated for the same regional recognition program as the woman now sitting with a water bottle in her hands. He had sat on the selection committee once. He knew that watch. He looked at the man in the grey shirt. Something about that man, the way he sat, the way he hadn't moved, the way his eyes were tracking everything with the calm assessment of someone who does this professionally. Felix didn't know who he was yet, but he knew who he was going to stand up for. Ray Cutler had come back to stand near Loretta. Deborah was on the phone. The situation was about to escalate to whatever the next step was. Felix set down his magazine. He pushed himself up from his chair. He walked to the reception desk. Felix put both hands on the counter. He wasn't tall. He wasn't imposing. He was a 71-year-old man in a cardigan, with reading glasses folded into his breast pocket. But he had the particular stillness of someone who had spent decades delivering news in rooms where people needed him to be steady. And that stillness had a weight to it. "Excuse me," he said to Deborah. She looked up from her phone call. "I need one moment," she said, and turned back to the call. "I think you need this moment more than that one," Felix said. "Not loud, not rude, just certain." Felix looked at her steadily. "I've been sitting in this room for the past 25 minutes. I've watched everything that has happened with that woman over there." He didn't point. He didn't need to. "I want to tell you one thing before this goes any further." Deborah straightened. "Sir, this is an internal matter. I was on the selection committee for the Regional Healthcare Recognition Program in this area 4 years ago." He reached into his breast pocket, pulled out his glasses, put them on. "The watch that woman is wearing was given to recipients of that award. I know what it looks like because I helped choose who received it. I also know that her son presented at a regional medical leadership conference 2 years ago. I was in the audience." Deborah opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," Felix said. Quiet. Final. The waiting room had gone completely still. Patricia Hale had put her phone down. Ray Cutler had not moved. Callie was frozen at her terminal. "I don't know exactly who that woman is to this institution," Felix continued. "But I know who she is, and I know what I've watched happen in this room in the last half hour. And if you proceed with what you're planning, I will be the first person to give a formal statement about it." He looked at Deborah for one long moment. Then he walked back to his chair and sat down. The room was silent. Deborah looked at Ray. Ray looked at the floor. And the man in the grey shirt stood up. He wasn't rushing. He moved the way he always moved, steady, unhurried, with the particular economy of someone who doesn't waste effort. He walked to the desk. Deborah looked at him. Another patient stepping in, she thought. Another complication. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set something on the counter. A badge, not a patient card, a staff credential. Deborah looked at it, then looked at his face, then back at the badge. The name read, Solomon Caine. The title below it read, Chief Medical Officer, Regional Health Division, and the photograph matched the man standing in front of her. The color left her face. Solomon's voice didn't change. Same register, same pace. The woman you've been asking to leave, he said, is my mother. 3 sentences. That was all. The room absorbed it like a physical impact. Patricia Hale's hand went to her mouth. Callie made a sound. She immediately swallowed. Ray Cutler took one slow step backward. Deborah's mouth opened. Mr. Caine, I didn't know. There was a question about the booking, the system showed. The system showed a valid confirmed appointment paid in full 6 weeks ago. Solomon's voice was level. I checked it before I came in this morning. I'm familiar with how your booking system works. I helped approve the software contract. He reached into his jacket again and took out his phone. He dialed. Put it on speaker, set it on the counter. 2 rings, Solomon. A woman's voice, clear, professional. Dr. Cho, I'm at Meridian. I need you to initiate a full incident review for the premium care intake process, effective this morning. And I need a suspension order for the patient experience manager on duty. A pause. Understood. I'll have it within the hour. He picked up the phone, ended the call. He looked at Deborah one more time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. My mother spent 38 years caring for patients who couldn't always afford to be there. She never asked anyone to know who she was before she helped them. He looked at the badge on the counter, then back at Deborah. You looked at her and decided she didn't belong. That decision tells me something, and so does everything that followed it. He picked up the badge. He walked past the desk, past the waiting area, through the door, into the general corridor. He was going to find his mother. Loretta was sitting in a chair near the water dispenser in the hallway outside the general intake area, hands folded, back straight. The water bottle Esther had given her was on the floor beside her feet. When Solomon came around the corner, she looked up. She looked at his face. She read it the way mothers read faces, all the information before the words. He sat down in the chair beside her. Not across from her, beside her. He didn't say anything for a moment. Neither did she. Then he put his hand over hers, where they were folded on her knee. She looked at his hand, then at his face. Her chin moved. A slight tremor she pressed away immediately. She breathed once, slow and controlled, through her nose. That was the only sign. After a long moment, she said, "How long were you in there?" "Long enough." She nodded. She looked at the wall across from them. "Solomon," she said. Not his nickname, not his title, his full name. The one she'd chosen before he was born. "I don't need you to punish her. I know. What I need is for you to make sure this doesn't happen to the next person. The person who doesn't have you in the building." He held her hand. He didn't answer right away. "I know, Mama," he said. She looked at him. Her eyes were steady. "Then do something that lasts." The investigation moved quickly and found more than it expected. Deborah Mast had 4 prior complaints on file, all from patients of color. All marked resolved with no documented action taken. The first was 19 months ago. A black man, a retired teacher, told his appointment was likely an error and directed to the general side. He had filed a complaint. It was logged. Nothing followed. The pattern was clear and documented. But what the investigation found next was something different. Todd Ma's marketing files contained a document, not an official policy. An internal guidance note, distributed to intake staff, describing the patient profile that premium care was designed to serve. The language was careful, corporate, technically non-discriminatory. But when read alongside the complaints, the picture it painted was specific. A system had been built, not just a person acting badly, a system. Todd was suspended pending a full administrative review. The document was pulled. Legal was brought in. Deborah was terminated. She was offered a conditional path back into healthcare administration, but it required 9 months of supervised work in a different role and completion of a full equity training program. Ray Cutler was required to complete new verification protocols. Training. From now on, A guest's credentials were to be checked directly in the system before any escalation. A lead attendant's word was not sufficient. Callie Norris went to her supervisor the morning after the incident and gave a voluntary written statement. She described the two accounts she had seen on her screen, her uncertainty about how to interpret them, and the moment she had chosen not to look harder. She asked to be part of the corrective training process. She now helps facilitate intake staff sessions. Patricia Hale sent a written statement to Meridian's administrative office 6 days later. 4 pages. She described what she had witnessed and what she had not done. She described the moment she had reached toward the call button and stopped herself, and the 3 lies she told herself to justify it. She requested to volunteer with the process improvement team. She was accepted. Felix Osei gave a formal witness statement that became one of the foundational documents of the investigation. When a staff member asked how he wanted to be described in communications, he said, "Just a patient who was in the room. That's enough." Solomon called an all-staff meeting, not a press release, not a statement, a meeting. Every clinical and administrative staff member at Meridian, in person. He stood at the front, without notes. He told them about his mother. He told them about 38 years of charge nursing at a public hospital, about 4,000 patients, about $52,000 at the peak of her career, about the watch she wore on her wrist that marked her as someone the healthcare system had already recognized as exceptional. He told them she had paid $890 for a cardiology appointment 6 weeks in advance. He told them what happened when she walked in. The room was very quiet. "I was 10 feet away," he said. "I watched the whole thing. And here's what I keep thinking about. If my mother, with her credentials and her record, can walk into our building and be told she doesn't belong, then we have not built what we said we built. Not her failure. Ours." He looked across the room. The problem was not one employee. The problem was a document that told employees what a premium care patient looks like. The problem was a culture that let 4 complaints go unaddressed. The problem is that nobody in that room yesterday stopped it, including me, until I had no choice. He paused. "I'm fixing the document. I'm fixing the complaints process. I'm fixing the training. But those are systems. What I cannot fix from the front of a room is what you choose to do when you see something wrong happening. Only you can fix that." The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The new patient standards program launching next month is named after my mother. Her name, not mine. Because she's the one who sat in the chair. The Caine standard was mandatory across the regional health division within 90 days. Complaint rates from patients of color dropped 37% in the first year of implementation. 3 other health systems requested access to the curriculum. The internal guidance document that Todd Ma had circulated became a case study in what not to do, distributed in healthcare administration ethics courses. On the wall of every staff lounge in Meridian's facilities, framed in simple wood, was a sentence. The sentence Loretta used to say to every nursing student she supervised during her 38 years. She had said it so many times it had become automatic, the way things do when you believe them completely. "You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to make sure they are." Esther Webb was formally recognized in the incident documentation as the only staff member who had acted correctly during the event itself. She received a mentorship placement with Solomon's office. She opened every Caine standard training session the same way, from the first one to the most recent one. She told the story of the water bottle. She said, "It was nothing. It was everything. It was the only human thing that happened in that room before things changed." She never missed a session. Loretta's cardiology appointment was rescheduled and completed the following Thursday. Dr. Vasquez saw her on time. The results were good. She drove home in the afternoon light, parked in her driveway, and sat for a moment. Then she went inside. She made tea. She sat in her chair by the window, the one she'd had for 20 years, the one shaped exactly to how she sat. She looked at the watch on her wrist. She thought about Esther, 26 years old, first rotation, not her department, not her responsibility, who had put down a tray of supplies, taken a bottle of water from her own bag, and walked across a room to ask a simple question. Loretta thought about all the times in 38 years she had done the same thing. Crossed a room when it wasn't her job. said something when it would have been easier not to. She thought, that's how it goes. You do it. Someone sees you do it. They remember. They do it for someone else. The phone rang. Solomon. She picked up. You eat yet? She said. Just getting home. There's soup in the freezer. The red container. Heat it slow. Mama, and call me when you've eaten. She heard him exhale. Not frustration. Something softer than that. Yes, ma'am, he said. She hung up and looked out the window. Here's what I want to leave you with. This story gets told as a story about a powerful son who fixed what was broken. And yes, Solomon Caine did that. He used what he had, and he used it well. But what actually happened in that room, the thing that started the chain, was Felix, 71 years old, another patient, someone with no job title relevant to the situation. He saw a woman being treated as less than she was. He recognized her, and he stood up, and before him, Esther, 26, first rotation, carrying a tray of supplies. She put the tray down and crossed the room with a bottle of water. Neither of them had power. Neither of them was protected by anything except what they chose to do. The system changed because Solomon was there, yes, but the human moment, the one that made it possible to stay in that chair instead of walking out, that was Esther. And the first person to force the room to stop and look honestly at what was happening, that was Felix. You might never be Solomon in a situation like this. Most of us aren't. But every single one of us has the option to be Felix, to stand up, to name what we're seeing. And every single one of us has the option to be Esther, to cross the room, to hand someone a bottle of water and ask if they're all right. Size. That's the question that stays with me from this story. Not about Deborah, not about the system, not even about Solomon. The question is what Loretta asked in her own way, just by sitting in that chair with her back straight and her hands folded and refusing to leave. She asked, what will you do when you see this? And the only person who answered that question in real time was a nursing intern who put down a tray and asked if she wanted some water. I want to know your answer. If you were in that room, which version of yourself shows up? The one who sees it and looks down, or the one who crosses the room? Drop it in the comments. I mean that. And if this story hit you somewhere real, send it to someone who needs it. Someone who's been sitting in a chair they paid for and being told they're in the wrong place. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And remember this. Dignity is not something a building gives you. It's what you carry in when you walk through the door. And no one, not a manager, not a policy, not a room full of silent witnesses, can take it out of your hands.